Is the Staccato XC really worth the money? Today, I'm going to take it apart, find out what's inside, and see exactly what you're getting for your money. Hey guys, welcome to Jim's Armory. I'm Jim. Today, as I said, I've got the Staccato XC here. Since its release in late 2021, it has become the standard to which all other 2011s are compared. Just think of the titles you've seen, the videos. Is this the Staccato killer? Is that the Staccato killer? Is it dead? Has it been killed? 4 years later, is this still worth $4,300? Or have recent releases to the market, like the SIG P211 GTO for $2,300, or the Kimber 2K11, and the recent 2K11 comp that just came out. Is that the Staccato killer? Those are some great guns. 2025 was an excellent year for this platform. So my question today is, what are you getting? What exactly do you get for $4,300? And is it really worth it? I can tell you what you're getting from the outside is a slide and a frame machined out of solid billet 4140 high carbon steel. You're going to get an ignition system machined out of steel. There are no MIM parts in this gun. All these parts are hand fit by a gunsmith. The slide and the frame will not even fit together when they're first machined. They are hand fit. The barrel lugs are hand fit to the barrel. But at the same time, you're getting a plastic grip, a very cheap feeling plastic trigger, a shitty canvas bag, and two 17-round magazines. They're in the trash. They're useless. Today, the expectation is high capacity magazines, 20 plus rounds. With the SIG, you get a 23 rounder and two 21 rounders. And heck, our Alpha Foxtrot Romulus we picked up for about $1,400. Excellent shooting gun. It's got a machined hammer. The sear and disconnect are MIM. Does that really even matter? I don't know. It shoots great, has a great trigger. And for that price, it came with 5 magazines, one 17 rounder that in the trash, 4 20 round magazines. Excellent deal. So the question stands, is it dead? Well, let's take it apart today. I want to see every last piece in here and see what exactly are we getting for $4,300. All right, so as usual, we'll get started by showing clear. There is nothing in the chamber. There is no magazine. Again, double check, physically check. We're clear. So I'll start by taking off the slide. And I think one of the first really great features of this gun is this Dawson toolless guide rod. Definitely a premium feature. Definitely a convenience. Interesting. Staccato only, point safe. Okay. Not sure what that means. Now I think the next thing we really need to look at here is this, what's known as an island comp or an island sight, because of this here and how it fits into the frame or the slide. From what I understand, this is very difficult to do and probably really a testament to the level of engineering and machining capabilities of Staccato. Interesting, or something I want to point out about this, is that the barrel actually ends somewhere around here. And what you're seeing here is a much larger area. And this is an expansion chamber. So what happens is when the gun is fired and the projectile is leaving the barrel, these gases rapidly expand in this area, and they want to continue to expand and go somewhere. Now, the hole in the front is just large enough for the projectile, slightly larger, but it's a much smaller hole than this. So taking the path of least resistance, your gases are going to escape here, and thus keeping the muzzle down and helping you manage muzzle flip. So a phenomenal piece of machinery right here, very impressive. I think next, looking at the slide, obviously we are steel. This is not the ultimate test, but it's something. at least. You can see that magnets stick to it. So I'm going to go ahead and remove firing pin, have a look. So this is, I believe, a stainless steel firing pin. I can't be 100% sure about that. Nothing exactly remarkable about that piece. I do want to take a look at the extractor. So this is a very classic 1911 inspired design. Some of our more modern guns, like the P211 from SIG, has an external extractor, much like a lot of our, here's a 320, has a external extractor. The Canic has an external extractor, and even the Kimber has an external extractor. So Staccato has decided for whatever reason to stick with the old tried and true, and you may have heard some rumblings on the internet about how these are finicky and need to be adjusted and all that, and I've never had a problem with one of them, maybe on really old guns or guns that have been abused or not cleaned properly. But the adjustment people are referring to is simply a gunsmith bending them and then checking the proper tension on the casing of the shell. So nothing to be afraid of here. Otherwise, I think something else to look at here to see what we're getting for our money is the barrel to slide lockup, which is facilitated by these called the locking lugs on the barrel, and then the inverse inside the slide here. Now these should be a tight fit, and I have very, very little forward to backward movement here. You can just barely hear that. That's a really tight fit. And the way this works, when the gun is fired, it's not blowback that causes the slide to go back. It's not the explosive, kickback of the actual shell igniting. It's the recoil of it, which there's a subtle difference, and I'll see if I can explain. So these lugs, the purpose of those is to create a delay so that it helps mitigate recoil, because if it was just purely blowback, that would be a lot of force, a lot of kick on the gun, a lot more than you're actually experiencing. So the gun will actually stay closed for a bit and delay. And then once it starts to go back, the barrel actually pulls down and out of the way as the slide goes back. And you can really see that on a gun like a Glock or other striker-fired guns. I remember the first time I saw one of those in the 80s and saw the slide locked open and saw the barrel bent. Different mechanism, same concept. So that's why those are important in this kind of gun, and having a nice fit is important. And these are fit by a human being at the factory. There's a great video on the Staccato factory, a factory tour they did with another gun tuber, and she went through and they explained every station and every step of the manufacturing process. So that is part of what you're paying for. All right, moving on to the lower part here. I think I'll just start by removing the mag well. Okay, this feels like aluminum. And magnet test kind of susses that out a bit. Yeah, aluminum. And now our mainspring housing. Plastic, again, not a huge fan of that. You can buy a metal one that'll even probably fit in this grip, but I'm not real big on the grip either, as I said earlier in the video. But this is pretty standard stuff. I don't have a way to scientifically measure it, but I would estimate this spring weight to be at about maybe 17 to 20 pounds. Don't quote me on that because I do not know for sure what that is. All right, and now hammer back. I can remove the safety. Now the detent may want to take flight. It's right here. And there's a spring that travels all the way through a tube through here, if you will, to a detent on the front, which is for our slide catch. So to avoid losing this piece, I'm just going to put a rag here. I'm going to hold it with my left hand and use my right hand to just wiggle this off. And I felt something. Okay. That's very unusual. Give me a second, I'm confused. Okay. Interesting. So, I've never seen this happen before. So here's the spring, and there's the detent for the slide catch, and the detent for the safety seems to have popped off for some reason. And you heard it snap on there. I don't know how that could have snapped off. And something gunsmiths and folks will typically do is bend this spring, either with, bend it over a thumbnail or get a tiny pair of needle nose pliers and actually bend the spring like this. And what that'll do is it'll prevent it from flying out of there if you take your gun apart frequently. If you shoot a lot, you probably do tear it down quite a bit further than your typical field strip to really get it cleaned out. But I don't like that, but it's not necessarily a problem or a defect with the gun. It's just an anomaly that's a little bit annoying. All right, so let me get this off. And now I think we can just pop all the guts out of here at once. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. There we go. That looks like everything. I'm going to divide this up. Here's our grip safety. Here's our thumb safeties, detent. Here's our hammer and hammer strut. Here's our disconnector, our sear. I'll put these parts sort of and how they relate to each other. And here's our sear spring. And here is our sear pin and our hammer pin. I may want to go ahead and I'm going to take the grip off because I want to take a look at the trigger that I mentioned I don't like. I'm just going to use a back of a punch here. You'll see why in a minute. Oh, that. And that. And now, I believe this is a 16th Allen here. That is a very tight fit. All right, and mag release. And trigger. Okay. So I'll talk about the grip a little bit. There's a lot of polymer being used right now. This is not unusual. It's not the only ones doing it. Heck, it goes all the way back to the 80s when the first I remember was Glock doing it. And I remember all the news reports back then. Oh my God, there's plastic guns. People will get through metal detectors. Not the case. There's plenty of steel here. But I've just never been a fan. I don't know. And I don't really like this one. A couple things I don't like. It just feels cheap. I don't like the texture. It could be a little bit more aggressive. And there's just the way I hold a gun is a little strange. I have very, very large hands. So my hands kind of tend to overcrowd the gun. And I end up reaching around the front of the trigger guard. And there's a very sharp edge right here. You can hear it catching my fingernail, and after shooting this for a while, it really started bothering me. I didn't like it. It could easily be sort of filed down or sanded down or something, but I'm just not a big fan of this. I wish it was aluminum. I would be more impressed with an aluminum grip. The SIG has an aluminum grip. I like that much better. However, all the other 2011s I have in front of me right here all have polymer grips as well. I've got two Kimber 2K11s here. I've got a Romulus, and that's what I've got on the wall in front of me anyway. So it's not unusual. It's just at this price point, I'd rather see aluminum. Same with the mainspring housing. I just feel like I'd rather see metal right here. And in fact, I mentioned you can buy a metal one and even put it in the plastic grip if you wanted to. It's probably not a real big deal, but might end up replacing all that anyway. So next thing I want to look at is the ignition system. So the hammer, this edge right here is our primary engagement with the sear, which would look about like this. Let's see if I can hold it. Probably not, but it would be something like that. And so this relationship right here is super critical. It can make the difference between a safe gun and an unsafe gun, a gun with a nice smooth break and a gun with a sloppy one. It can impact the feeling of your trigger pull, everything. This is probably the most important contact surface in a 1911 or 2011, sorry. So looking at that, maybe I can magnify this a little bit. That should be exactly 90 degrees, and it should be very smooth. And this edge on the front of the sear right here, I don't know if my camera is going to focus for me or not on this, but that is very smooth. I can see some very light scratches in it, but they don't necessarily catch my fingernail. Maybe a tiny bit right there. If you can see that. But in any case, it's obvious to me from looking at this part that this has been honed or lapped by a human being. I can tell that, and I wish I could just take a second to take one of these other guns apart and show you the difference, where it's just part of the mold, you know. And these are not molded pieces. These pieces are machined using EDM. I think it's electronic discharge machining. And it's a very thin wire that, you know, runs vertically and can go around these parts, and it uses electrical charges to make cuts within something like 4/1000ths of a, I think it was a millimeter I read, and I'm sorry, I cannot convert that in my head to freedom units, but it's goddamn small. And on top of that, this piece is honed by a person. On the sides, I can tell the side is polished. There's an A stamped. I don't know what the significance of that is, but that's obviously probably done maybe by one of the gunsmiths as they're working on it. I really don't know. And this piece has a D. Now, the surfaces on these that are important with the disconnector, these fit together about like that. And so the insides of the sear and the outsides of this piece where they rub together need to be smooth. They don't need to be mirror polished, but they need to be smooth, and there can't be a lot of slop. And I can tell you by looking at these are perfectly fitted together. There's just the tiniest little bit of air movement between them, if you can see that. And it is buttery smooth. I don't feel any little snags or any, it's just like butter, rubbing that back and forth. Why is that important? Because it indicates to me that a person has spent time making these pieces fit this way. Even with our 4/1000ths of a, or 40/1000ths of a millimeter, or whatever the hell it was, that's not perfect. That's still far from perfect. That still requires work to be done by hand in order to get these pieces to fit together this well. Now, the way these go in the frame of the gun is the disconnector goes up through this hole right here. What I should have spent some time on that, but the surfaces on the inside of the frame, inside here, are important too. That's where the hammer goes. That's where the disconnector and the sear go. So these need to be smooth. And it doesn't sound that smooth only because I don't believe this has been polished. I don't think it's necessary that they be polished. I think it looks like maybe the edge of this pin maybe was, but in any case, these pieces all look like they fit really well together. And now as far as the sear spring goes, these pieces would look like this from the back of the gun. And this spring would mate up with them like that. The spring in the middle is responsible for pushing the disconnector up and forward. And this spring on the bottom of the screen would push on the sear, just on the very bottom part of it, right there. And that's what pushes it up to engage with our hammer. I can't hold all these pieces. It's insane. But looking at this, I can see time was spent. This is common. This is what a gunsmith would do. This is what I would do if I got a gun and I wanted to make it shoot better. I would polish this. I would polish this where it mates up with the sear, and this where it hits the disconnect. I would make sure that edge was smooth. I would make sure this one was ramped a little bit just like it is right there. I don't know if that will show up on the camera or not. Probably not. There, you can kind of see that little sharpened edge just on the top surface right there. And most impressive, I noticed while I was fumbling around with this piece, is that someone has taken the time to actually round off and sort of polish the end of this. I've never seen that. Most people will say, oh, this one doesn't matter. That's just for the grip safety. True, but if you want a really smooth grip safety, that's how you do it. And I believe it fits. I've never really been able to see inside to see how that fits, but anyway, that's impressive. So that's what you're getting for your money. What else? I think one last thing. So they mentioned in that factory tour that when the frame and the slide first come off the machine, they don't fit. It's too big. The slide is not big enough, and I guess the frame is too big, and they will not mate together. A human being does this. Again, it's because of those little thousandths that, of inaccuracies that are inherent in machining, the machining process, whether it's EDM or traditional machining. So that is very smooth. There's no grittiness or anything. The only thing you can really hear is that there's a gap between these and nothing in the front. That's typical. The only gun I've ever seen that has full length rails is P226, and the X5 variant of that has full length. Probably other guns too. I'm just not aware of them. So this is typical for a 1911. That's a very, very good fit. You can tell that with just a little bit of oil in there, it would just slide like butter. Now, it's not 100% perfect. Look, hear that? So if it didn't have that, though, it probably wouldn't work. It'd probably be too tight and there'd be too much friction. So there has to be some little bit of a gap. But I can tell you it feels very, very nice. So that's what you're paying for. That's what you're getting. My opinion in looking at all of this is that this is a gunsmith gun, meaning a gunsmith has spent time putting these pieces together. They didn't just fall out of the machine and get thrown together in a little box on their way out the door. Somebody's put this together. And in fact, Staccato even sends you a piece of paper that, from what I understand, is shot from rest at 5 yards. And they have to put 3 shots through a 1/2 inch little square on the target. It's in, let me get it. Actually, it's here. There it is. So from 5 yards, this is the actual piece of paper they shot. So these holes are actually a little bigger than that. It's just that it's been smashed flat. So if you're wondering why they look like 22 holes, that's why. So they use Staccato match 125 ammo. That's a serial number, and this is the person who did it. So these are the gunsmiths that do the final assembly that actually go and fire these 3 shots. And it's just right across the little walkway from where their workstations are. They walk over there to their little indoor gun range and they fire this. So these are not only all in the black, they're touching each other. So that's what you're getting for your money. Whoops. All right, guys, so I want to answer that question. Is it dead? Is it really worth $4,300? The answer is not really that straightforward. I want to talk about cars for a minute. You can pick up a Mustang or a Dodge Charger. You can maybe even do a little work to it. You can end up with an incredibly fast, really good looking car. Or you can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a Ferrari or something else, a Bugatti. Did I even say that right? I'm not a car enthusiast necessarily, but if that matters to you, if it matters to you to know that you've bought a gun that's all steel, was hand fit by a gunsmith, and you know you've got the best. See, I think the draw for me anyway of this platform is the simplicity of it and the upgradability of it. There's a vast aftermarket world of parts for 2011s and 1911s. There's a vast wealth of knowledge that can be shared and that's transferable from one gun to another. Unlike something like a SIG or a CZ or something, a hammer fired, I'm talking like a 226 or a CZ Shadow. It's very specialized and that knowledge doesn't necessarily transfer one-to-one to another gun. But with the 2011 platform, you suddenly can replace the grip modules. You can replace the trigger. If you don't like this trigger or this grip, you can replace them. You can spend as little or as much as you want. You can buy a nice aluminum grip for $400. You can buy one for $600 something from Atlas. You can buy a steel grip if you want to add some weight to it. You can do what you want to this. And I think the beauty of this market right now that we're in, it's almost the golden age, I think. You can buy something like a Romulus, or you can buy a Mac DS9 and you can put a grip in it, you can put new internals, you can take it to a gunsmith, have it all polished and honed and lapped or whatever, and you can have an incredibly good gun. And you can piece it together as you go. Buy what you can afford now. Go and buy a $900 gun and then spend $500 here or there, $300, whatever, and build it out. Or you can go buy the best. And in terms of a hand-built gun, this is probably one of the best deals you're going to find. Go look at an Atlas, go look at an Infinity, go look at who is it? I can't think of all the names right now. And there's been some dumpster fires too, like the Watchtower, Apache. And I think they're trying to reinvent themselves kind of like Staccato did. Staccato did an interesting thing. They went from STI, which was purely competition guns, very narrow market, very expensive, but also very narrow, limited audience, to specializing in law enforcement and still catering to those of us who like the high performance aspect of a Series 70, tricked out gun. So to answer the question, yeah, you're getting your money's worth here. It's a little insulting to me still that I got this plastic grip I don't care for. It's not that great. The texture's not super good. I'm not impressed with it. And I don't like the trigger very much. The shoot's great. And I can upgrade those things if I want. And I'm still not paying $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 like you would for some of these other, boutique handmade gunsmith guns. So this, in my opinion, is a highly marketable, accessible gunsmith gun that you can actually afford. The P211 GTO is not a gunsmith gun. The Kimber's not even a gunsmith gun. They advertise that one person works on the gun and puts the whole thing together. That may be true. I've had it apart and looked. It's not a gunsmith gun, trust me. It's a great gun, not a gunsmith gun. So if it matters to you, this is mine. I'm going to keep it. I may upgrade it, but I think that the question you'd ask yourself is, what kind of person are you? Are you a Ferrari guy or are you a Mustang guy? And that's your answer. Thanks for watching. More to come.